We're talking about my learning disability today, or my learning preferences, as some people would actually say. If you have seen my TED Talk, you will know that I was diagnosed with a learning disability when I was in the 8th grade and told by a clinical psychologist that I'd never be able to finish high school. So that, in fact, did not happen. I did go to university and completed 3 degrees, including my doctorate. So this video, I'm going to be talking about 6 things that I did. Okay, 6 things that I did to help myself go from a low 60% average to the mid 80s that completely changed my life. So if we haven't met, my name's Dr. Karen. I've been doing this work for over 25 years, working with families. Now work with global companies on leadership development. And so this whole notion around learning disabilities, if you are a parent, you are going to want to definitely pay attention to this. And certainly if you've got kids that have a learning disability, but also I think to be quite honest, I'm looking over my notes actually just when I was actually preparing for this. And I'm looking over the 6 things that I did. And these are actually really good principles for all of us, okay? So whether or not we have a LD or not, I think you're going to find them actually really helpful. All right, and this was top of mind for me. I was interviewed on a really big podcast this week, and this came up. And so I thought, you know what, this would make actually good video content for our YouTube channel. So make sure you like our YouTube channel. We've got lots of videos. And check out some of our other videos that we actually have as well. All right, so here we go, everybody. Here we go. Number 1, first thing that I did to really help myself in terms of with my learning disability. The first thing is it's really important for, and this is a little bit more on the parenting side, it's really important for people to experience the consequences of their choices. So when I was in the 8th grade and told that I'd be lucky to finish high school, my parents, to their wisdom, they did not rescue me, okay? So when I actually started high school and they encouraged me to get some help and get some tutors, I was like, nope, I am not interested and I am not gonna talk to anybody. I'm totally embarrassed, I'm totally ashamed. And to the wisdom of my parents, they actually said, fine, that it's your life, not our life. And they allowed me to experience the consequences of that bad choice. That was not a wise choice. And that's hard for parents, right? As parents, what we want to do is we don't want our kids to experience failure. We don't want our kids to have all this hardship. So we try to a lot of times rescue them. You don't want to do that, especially if you've got a strong-spirited kid. The best thing you can do is allow them to reap the consequences, assuming that this is not life-threatening. Allow them to reap the consequences of their choices, the rewards and the consequences of their choices. And so that's what happened. That was the first one. Was I had experienced the consequence of my choices, and I didn't get any, I didn't tell anybody when I first started high school, and I failed miserably my very first exam in high school. And that was my wake-up call. So if you've got a strong-spirited child, and I am one, so trust me, I understand how they work. That was my wake-up call. All of a sudden I realized, in order for me to achieve any kind of goal that I have or any level of success, however I defined it, I needed to change my ways. The way that I was choosing was not working. And so I had to experience the consequences of my choices. So that was actually number 1. And once I realized that, all of a sudden things started kind of like changing for me. So by the second half of grade 9, after I got horrible marks in the first half, here comes the second one, all right? Second one is I stopped doing this alone and I started putting up my hand and asking for help. And so once I was willing to ask for help, I talked to my head of guidance. I told every single one of my teachers. I started going in for extra help at lunchtime and after school. This was all a free resource that the school offered, so it didn't even cost anything. It was a free resource that I just wasn't using. But all of a sudden, this is step number 2, is I started asking for help. And this is really, really important, that we should not do this on our own. We've got resources. There's people around us. A lot of teachers, you know what I learned? A lot of teachers, they want their students to be successful. And so when I went and I introduced myself to my teachers, I'm like, listen, I'm struggling. I'm really struggling. I want to do well in your class. I'm struggling with this. Could you help me Teachers were like so happy, right? They were so happy. And they're like, okay, Karen, you come in at lunchtime and you come in after school, and I'm going to help teach you the content that somehow, your brain is just not absorbing. And so that's what I did. And so that was kind of number two, is start putting my hand up. And what was interesting is at the time, I did not realize until much later on that I was starting to build out my emotional intelligence by this time. This is now in the ninth grade, 10th grade. And because part of emotional intelligence is realizing I know some, but there's a lot of things I don't know. So I'm going to start putting my hand up and asking for help. And that sense of humility is part of emotional intelligence. I didn't even know that that's what I was starting to use. But that massively started changing the results that I was actually receiving. And so if you would like to measure your leadership emotional intelligence, write in the word in the comments below, scorecard. And someone from our team will actually send it to you. It's free. It's a free resource. And I talk about the different parts of emotional intelligence and how goal setting and asking for help is actually part of the five. So that's a great resource. And certainly if you've got kids, you can use the scorecard for yourself, but also for your kids actually as well. Don't score them. Get them to score themselves. Just a little thought. Okay, so that's number two. Okay, everybody, is started putting my hand up and asking for help. Number three is I actually started learning about what my disability was. Okay, and so some people say, is it a learning disability? Is it a learning preference? It's, I think, both, to be quite honest. But I realized that I'm off the charts visual and kinesthetic in my approach, but also how my auditory processing actually works. I needed to engage with content in a certain way. And so I started really understanding what my brain needed in order for me to actually absorb a certain information. So I would, sit in a class and I would take notes, but then I also started all kinds of different things, but I also started getting copies of other people's notes to kind of cross-reference it with my own notes so that I could actually start closing the gaps. But I started leaning in and actually understanding what my disability was so that I could actually close the gap and actually properly learn the material. So that is like number three. Number four, okay, everybody, this is a big one. This was one that we can all connect to. I stopped comparing myself to anybody else other than myself. I realized that if I had a goal, so at the time I was like low 60s on my average. My goal was eventually to get to the honor student, and I did get there. But at the beginning, it was like goal was 63. My average was 63. Goal is to get to like 68. When I got to 68, goal is to get to 73. When I got to 73, goal is to get to 78. And I just kind of kept on pushing myself, but like these stretching goals, okay? And but I realized that when I was doing that, the second, if all of a sudden I started looking at the people kind of to, how my friend over here was doing, or this friend, if I started comparing myself to other people, I would just feel deflated. I would feel exhausted. I'd feel like, oh, life is not fair. And I had to realize, what, life is not fair. It is not fair why some people can learn things so fast and other people can't. Life is not fair. And so I realized I had to stop comparing myself to anybody else other than myself. And I had to kind of just keep myself razor focused on that. So that is like number four. Number five is just a really practical one, actually, is I actually started paying attention to anything that would actually distract me and removing those distractions. So for example, I actually talked to all my teachers about this. I said, I realized when I'm sitting at the back of the room, I'm getting distracted. So can I actually sit at the front of the room? Can I sit at the front of the room? Because I feel like that's going to eliminate the distractions. And again, teachers were very happy to accommodate this. They thought these were actually some really great things. So I started sitting at the front of the room. That was huge. And then also teaching the material to my parents when I actually got home. My dad got me this fabulous chalkboard. He got it from an old church that was actually being ripped down in the country. And I still have it, actually. It's in my Toronto office. But we put this chalkboard into my bedroom. And so what I would do is I would actually, when I would be studying for tests, I would actually write everything out on this chalkboard and then invite my mom and dad into my room and actually teach them the content using this chalkboard. And just kind of, again, really understanding and learning in terms of how my brain actually worked. and having something that was much more experiential and drawing something up on the chalkboard and then actually teaching it to them all really helped the information to solidify in my brain and help me kind of have a little bit more fun with it. Okay, so that was kind of number 5. And the last one, and this actually is actually really fun, everybody. The last one, number 6, is I started understanding my strengths in education. So when I started looking at the marks that I was doing really well at, it was a lot of times it was presentations. And it wasn't just presentations, it was actually making things fun and taking a lot of information and chunking it and seeing patterns in the information and then putting it into a game so that people could actually learn it. And so I realized that when I started getting really good marks in grade 11 and in grade 12, and eventually, like I said, I was an honor student, and it had like mid 80 average, which was fantastic. But I realized like a lot of my best marks were in presentations. There was a lot of these presentations that in research assignments and presentations. And what's really fun about that, everybody, is that that is exactly with what I did once I eventually started my practice and started working with teenagers and designed the 3 chairs. Again, if you've seen my TED Talk, the 3 chairs is literally the strength of how my brain works, is that I can actually look through all kinds of information and research and see the pattern and then make it into something that's really simple for people to actually understand. The 3 chairs is really playing to the strength of how my brain works. And so that's a really important piece, is that all of us have strengths. All of us. I have them. We all have strengths. So it's really important. This is the 6th one. It's really important for us to kind of figure out, okay, what is my strength? What is my strength as it relates to learning? What is my strength as it relates to school? And figure out what is your strength and then play to your strengths. There's a lot of things that I don't do well as it related to school, but presentations and finding patterns in data and chunking it and simplifying it and making it fun, that was my strength. And I've been able to make a really amazing career out of that strength. And so we don't have to be amazing at everything. We just need to find our thing that we happen to be really good at and just double down on it and focus in on it. And I was sharing on the podcast this week that, at the time, my disability was like this huge curse. I saw this as this curse in my life that was like, life is so unfair. And I honestly look at it now as one of my greatest teachers. It's my greatest teacher. I'm so thankful. I'm so thankful because if I didn't have my disability, I don't think I ever would have created the 3 chairs. And so I am so grateful to my disability. But my encouragement, if you're listening, or if you've got an LD, or if you've got a child that has an LD, I hope that you are feeling inspired and you are feeling hopeful and know that you are worthy. It doesn't matter that if your brain learns a little different. I hear you. I'm with you. I share that with you. That's okay. Find what makes, just really lean into this and do these 6 steps that I have found to be really helpful, and find your own superpower. What is your own superpower that makes you super unique? And lean into that. And I hope you have found this video really helpful and inspiring and encouraging. And I look forward to seeing you at one of my other videos.